So therefore, there's a lot of argument, the constitutional arguments, the moral arguments, as well as the military arguments of why we're at a point now that we have to change our foreign policy. And I think that's happening. I have sensed it. I mean, compared to 4 years ago, doing campaigning and debates, the attitude was different. But the American people are waking up and they realize that it makes no sense for us to continue to do this. And I'm delighted to know that in these last 4 years of the tremendous interest in the Federal Reserve System. Last year, by working together with the Republicans as well as the Democrats, transparency of the Fed is endorsed by 80% of the American people. And guess why? Because they've heard stories about what has happened. You know, they created this huge bubble, and most people didn't fully understand how it happened, but they understood and got interested in what was going on with TARP funds and what the Federal Reserve was doing. The Federal Reserve pumped into the system $15 trillion. It's a huge amount of money, more than the Congress can do. So it's totally out of control. It's more powerful than the Congress when it comes to how much money they can spend. And 1/3 of what the Fed was involved in was bailing out foreign banks. I mean, just think of that, $5 trillion of that. And then what happens when you start thinking about who did they bail out of here at home? Did they bail you out? I mean, did they bail out your friends, or have you heard stories? How many people have lost their jobs and lost their homes in this country? But who got bailed out? The very people who were ripping us off in a system that was intertwined with the Federal Reserve, who did all the speculating in the derivatives market, and they finally got to the point that they became worthless. And guess what? You bought them through the Federal Reserve. They back up your dollar. That's why the dollar is in big trouble, because it used to be gold and silver backed up the dollar. Then it used to be just treasury bills backed up the dollar. Now it's these worthless assets that are literally used to back up the dollar. And they got the bailout, and the other people lost the job. Now, one thing I'm always interested in doing is talking to the opposition or people who disagree, that would consider themselves from the left and want to help people, and I recognize how serious they are, and social programs and welfare programs, and I understand that completely. I also understand that the truly humanitarian system that really works is free markets. That's how you really take care of people. But the answer to those who are concerned about what I'm saying, say, you don't care enough about the people. Well, I tell you what we have here, can they be caring about the people? What about a program based on Federal Reserve inflation plus affirmative action programs that everybody gets a house, no down payments, and they can borrow against it, and then the bubble bursts, they lose their job and they lose their houses? How can that be beneficial at the same time the system has bailed out the rich? And then when they come along and say, well, we have to have medical care for everybody. Well, both Republican and Democratic leadership have followed the same path, and that is to keep building more government involvement. Have the corporations, the insurance companies, and the drug companies, the health management companies, they are the ones who are in between the doctor and the patient. So all those monies, plus the bureaucrats in Washington, that's where all the money goes, and that's why it's so expensive, and then it interferes. Of course, my strong objection to that when practicing was the fact that it interfered with my decision making, and therefore I wouldn't participate in it, because I think good medicine is a doctor-patient relationship. But I have been a strong advocate for the freedom philosophy for a long time. I think the time is better now than it's ever been in the 30 years or so. Matter of fact, for many years I worked on the assumption that not too many people would even notice, and even my voting record for a long time they didn't notice. But now people do. They say, he's taking these stands, and sometimes even voted by myself 434 to 1, to show that there was a certain position to take when it comes to these issues. But the time is so ripe for this, because more and more people are waking up. So we have two sides going on. Everybody's worried. Everybody knows there's a problem, but one half is extremely worried because they have always been on the receiving end, and they don't see this as thank you very much for helping me out. I need help. I need to get back on my feet again. Many of them believe it's an entitlement. They believe they have a right to this, and they have a right to your money, and therefore government is supposed to tax you in order to take care of it. The other half now is recognizing this, that the system has gotten out of control. We've had too much government, and the solution is turning it back to the people. Let the people assume responsibility for themselves. And that's the system that I believe in, because I do not believe for a minute that government has the knowledge. People in Washington and in government, it's based on those who want to run things. The reason why I see fallacy is for two reasons. One is that government can't know what you want and what's best for you in the social sense or the economic sense. There's no way I can know your desires. But I know that freedom would allow you to make your own decision on how you spend your money and how you want to run your life. But if you turn it over to government, even though they think they're omnipotent, when they make a mistake, it affects every one of us. If you have the right to run your life and spend your money and you make a mistake, yes, you could get into trouble. But you don't have a right to go crawling to the government and say, I want my neighbors to take care of me. So there's a lot of responsibility put into this system where we actually recognize what liberty is all about. We had the most fantastic taste of that in this country in our early years. But since the 30s, I would say we have gone in the opposite direction. And that's why we're a debtor nation with less freedoms and more war. And this has to be reversed, because it will not be a nice place to live in if we can't reverse this. Now, they won't be able to create the wealth. There could be a lot more chaos, but that means if the authoritarians win, it's going to be with an iron rule. And believe me, they're there. I was one time sitting on a House floor, and it was one of these personal issue votes, and I said, why are you voting on this? Why do you have to tell people what they can do all the time? And he, with a very straight face, honestly says, they're not smart enough to know. And I thought, isn't that a disaster? Sure, somebody might make a mistake, but what happens when that guy makes the mistake? You know, and believe me, there are plenty of mistakes. The whole concept of central economic planning is a big mistake, and that's why it has to be challenged. So I am a strong believer in our Constitution. Change it when we have to, but I'm a strong believer that free markets work. It's humanitarian. The principle of liberty protects you in your social values. It protects you in your school values. It protects homeschooling. It protects you in your religious values and church values. And at the same time, it means that the government is restrained from fighting these undeclared, unwinnable, constant wars that are bankrupting us. If we accept that whole package of what individual liberty is all about in the tradition of America, not accepting the idea that we go back to some dark age. Freedom is a new idea. It's been barely tested, but we go back at least to when we had a fair amount of it and an understanding and build on that. I don't doubt for a minute that we could come out of this rather quickly. Just like an individual, if they declare bankruptcy, they might have a bad year. But if they go back to work and work hard and can keep what they earn, we could work our way out of this. But the key to it is understanding and protecting liberty, and understanding the limited role for government to protect markets, to protect sound money and contracts and property rights. This is what the government is supposed to be doing, but unfortunately now our government is doing the opposite. So I ask you to consider these views very seriously. Hopefully you can join me in this campaign. Certainly we're anxious to get as many people to come to Ames. Ames voting is going to be crucial in what we do. It's a national recognized straw vote. If we do badly there, it will not be a good message for liberty, and it will not be a good message for my enthusiasm, because I'll be unhappy if I come in last. So please don't let that happen. But there's every reason to believe that things are going quite well, and you could help a lot if you believe in what we're doing. Come to Ames, vote, bring some people, and we'll send a message that will be heard around this country. Thank you very much.